see now.
Come down. Oh, you make my high come down. Always tripping when you come around. Never have to cut you out like right now. You see, I don't have to drive me. You can say that for your mama. Maybe you should smoke some. Me try the marijuana. I was never you good. The vibe was straight. Shows you a couple of things and they feel the change. I treated you right. Everything was a gift from a time to your bag and the color on your lip. Yeah, you're plenty of friends.
Welcome to Seahawks Man to Man podcast, powered by The Athletic. Shout out to the company. My name is Michael-Shawn I'm here with my co-host, Christopher Kidd. Make sure you follow us both up on the tweet machine. You guys know where to follow me, so I'm just going to plug the YouTube channel, Seahawks Man to Man on YouTube. Shout out to everybody listening on audio, but just pause it real quick. Go over to YouTube, subscribe, and then come right back to Spotify, Apple, or however you're doing it. We appreciate the love. Chris, talk to him.
What is up, everybody? It's your boy, Christopher Kidd. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at CKIDD206 and that's CKid206.
All right, I'm going to start this one by just shouting out all you guys that listen to the pod. We really appreciate you. This is our last pod of 2021.
Crazy.
And we saw all the people that tweeted me and Chris and say, hey, look, here's my Spotify wrapped up thing. You guys are in my top, whatever. We appreciate the love. We appreciate the love after every game. All the questions you guys send in, they're so excellent. They're so excellent. They were really good today. Me and Chris go over every question before we hit the record button. And I found myself saying, wow, that's a good question, like 12 times. Because they were really compelling, nothing really too stupid or obvious. Great stuff. So I say that to say that we could talk about the game. You guys watched it. The Seahawks lost to the Bears. The Bears. The freaking Bears. The 4-10 Nick
4-9. Oh, yeah, they were 4-10. Yeah,
4-10. I remember I told my grandma the record.
I saw the tweet.
Yeah. My grandma thought they had a chance. Granny was wrong.
Mike, they did have a chance.
That's true. They lost by 1. I guess that's the definition of having a chance. But yeah, 4-10 Bears, who I didn't even see this until after the game. The head coach is reportedly going to be fired on Monday. Now he's probably not because he went to Seattle and got a win in a snowbank at Lumen Field. You guys saw it. Blew the lead. All the same things that have been happening all year. Bad on third down. Russ not getting it done. DK and Tyler not getting the ball. They finally ran the ball well, but then now the defense doesn't know how to play with a lead. It was almost like 2020 all over again. It was just a disaster. And you guys saw it, and you're so fed up with it that you didn't even ask any questions about it. We got like 50 questions today. Not one question is about the game. So we're going to think big picture. As my story that's already out on The Athletic, by the time you guys are reading this, kind of indicates, I'm done writing about the games too. I'm writing big picture. And it is time to rebuild. It's time to rebuild. We talked about this after our show with Ben Baller on after the Monday night game.
Against the Saints,
Against the Saints. That was week 7. We was already fed up. It's week 16. We're fed up. I said rock bottom was losing to Colt McCoy in week 11. I lied. This is rock bottom, and that's why we are going to just spend most of the time addressing big picture stuff, addressing the questions you guys have because they were really great. Thought-provoking, compelling, forced me to look up a lot of stuff, which is always good. So, Chris, let's jump right into it. Are you ready?
Unfortunately, I'm ready. As I was telling you off wax, I have nothing else to say. I've been talking about the same things for the last 3 weeks now.
Same stuff.
Just trying to figure out new ways to explain it.
Yeah.
Hey, they're not doing these things right. You know what? They're playing for each other. They're not going to make it to the postseason, but they love the guy next to them, and they're going to go out and compete. They did that, but they still found a way to lose. And as you can see in the title, they lost to the Chicago Bears. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. This is the first time we ever jumped in Twitter questions this early. So that's how you know it's bad.
This is the first time I've covered a Seahawks game that wasn't in the – actually, how I want to phrase this. This is the first time I've covered a Seahawks game that did not have playoff implications. In one way or another, they always have.
Yeah.
Right? Even if it's week 1 or week 12 or whatever, they always have because the team's always going to be in it. And those games matter later, tiebreakers, etc. This game literally had no playoff implications at all. They technically got eliminated today. So it kind of did, quote unquote, but it didn't. That was new. I had my editor before the game. I said, I've never really covered a meaningless game. What do we usually do here? at the company. I really did. I hit her up. I said that. And she was like, okay, here's how we usually do. I was like, because in my head, I was like, how do I cover a game that don't matter? And then they lost. I was like, I know exactly what to write. And so I did. So make sure you go read that first, because I probably addressed some of what you're wondering. But yeah, let's do it.
Well, let's kick things off with whose deficiencies are more detrimental to the future of the club, Russ's or Pete's? Seems like Russ's deficiencies are the same, but lost some attributes that made him special. Not seeing that things are growing.
That is a really good question. See, I did it again. I think that this is tough. So to answer this, let's decide what their deficiencies are, right? Russ, he is an elite passer, right? He is elite playmaker. There is really kind of no denying that. There's not a throw he cannot make. He's a very smart quarterback. You know, he sees the field pretty well, right? You don't make as many Pro Bowls and break all the records and things he has and be clutch and stuff like that without being able to read a defense. His deficiencies: he's not a dink and dunk rhythm type of guy. We've seen it in spurts, but that's just not his offense. To just like, if he sees the guy 20 yards downfield, he's going to throw that before he throws to the guy 7 yards in front of him, right? That's just kind of his thing. And then in the middle of the field is kind of not his bag. He can throw it there, right? You don't start in the league for 10 years and play at a high level if you don't use a third of the field. But like in high leverage situations, that's just kind of not his thing, really, unless the other team is playing cover zero. Think like the Doug's play, against, I want to say, the Patriots in 2016, the NFC title game winner to Jermaine Kearse. Even Tyler Lockett's play this year. Remember that one in week 1?
Yeah.
The third down. Yeah, that is over the middle of the field, but look at it. It was like a cover zero situation where you're basically throwing a moon ball. Like, basically, if it's not a moon ball, it's really not trying to throw it there, in a lot of traffic. That's just kind of not his thing. Compare that to like the throw that Matt Stafford had to Cooper Kupp on Tuesday for the second touchdown that just whizzes by Jordan Brooks and is dead in the middle of the defense. Tough throw. He had Al Woods bearing down on him. Those type of throws ain't really Russ's bag. So that's Russ's deficiencies. I would say the Pete's deficiency as a coach, because remember, he controls personnel. This is important. Pete's deficiencies as a coach, there's a few, but I think the main, I should say the thing he's good at, let's start with that. I did it with Russ. I should do it with Pete, to be fair. Pete's good at getting the most out of guys. Like, you look at a lot of guys, whether it's before they came here, after they came here, they play the best ball of their life in Seattle. Like I say, even if they've played well other places, they get here and it's just like look at Quandre, for example. Was never a bad player, gets here at Pro Bowls, right? Like, he's Jimmy Graham and Clowney notwithstanding, for a couple of reasons there. But like, there's just a lot of guys that get drafted here, play here, start here, and then go other places and just stink on offense and defense. Like, Pete gets a lot of, like, you're going to see guys, like, we've already seen it from mostly like even like a Jermaine Kearse, or I guess he didn't stink, but a Byron Maxwell, a Jeremy Lane, or some of these other DBs, even Brandon Browner. They go these other places and they're good, but they're not nearly as good as they were in Seattle. Even like Bruce Irvin or whatever. Like, guys, Pete gets a lot out of guys. I think that's a really important thing. I also think he's a good defensive coach. That's two of his really strengths. There's a bunch, but I'm gonna try to keep it shorter. The deficiencies. This is important. The deficiency, I think, as a coach is that he prefers a style of play that requires your defense be elite. Like, if you're going to do the whole ground and pound, let's run the ball, protect it, and play great defense, you basically need not just like a good defense, you need like a top 5 one to win a championship that way. Whereas if you just like have a more maybe high-powered offense that doesn't value like possessions as much as it values points, you can have like a below average or maybe just an average defense. You can just have like a good defense and win the Super Bowl, right? Or even get there, be competing for one, I think. That's a coaching deficiency, I think. Now, personnel side, no idea how to draft offensive linemen. Like that's there's a few things in the personnel side, but I think that's the biggest one, is that you need 5 fat dudes at all time who can pass block and run block, and they can never leave the field on offense. You need 5 of them. Okay. To gather all 5 is very hard. The best way to do that is the draft, because you need 5 of them. Remember, you can go get a quarterback. You only need one of him. Right? You need 5 linemen to never leave the field. That's tough. They're not good at drafting linemen. How many good linemen have the Seahawks drafted in 12 years? Like Okung,
James Carpenter.
Sweezy had a good run. Yeah, Carpenter's still in the league somehow. It's not looking great, right? You're like, that's just not their thing. And look at all the linemen they've whiffed on from round 1 to 7. So I think that's the biggest deficiency. I think is just the scouting of offensive linemen. Defensive linemen has not been as tricky. It's O-line in particular. And so I say all that to say, I think Pete's deficiencies are harder to build around, because when you routinely do not have a front line, like even now their front line is like below average at pass pro, even though they've kind of been better the last few weeks. They're good at like pass block win rate, but like pretty grayed out poorly every year. You can't keep overcoming bad protection, because that also probably means you're having guys who can't run block either, which is what we're seeing, the last few years as well. And I just think it's hard to overcome bad O-line play. You're just never going to consistently overcome that and be a championship contender, And if you are, it's because you have the baddest bunch of defenders in the land. And the Seahawks do not. So while I think they both have very important deficiencies, I think Pete's on the personnel side specifically are more detrimental than Russ's. Damn, that was long. I won't go long on all the other ones. But that was such a fascinating question that I wanted to really explain, because it's important. Pete's coaching deficiencies ain't that bad. And Russ's passing deficiencies also ain't that bad. But if your personnel, if you can't find me 5 fat dudes, we're eventually going to stink. And they stink.
So this one is, what part of the game do the Seahawks do well enough to legislate keeping Pete Carroll for another season?
I think the obvious answer would be defense. The defense laid an egg against the Bears. Come on. Nick Foles. I will say this. Nick Foles is not your typical third string quarterback. He's a third string quarterback that is a Super Bowl MVP. Right, like I'm not gonna just dismiss he's played well at points in his career. Didn't he have one year where he threw like 27 touchdowns and only had like 2 interceptions or something like that in the Chip Kelly offense? Yeah, so he's not like trash of the trash third string quarterbacks. However, the Bears have a very bad red zone offense, one of the worst in the league. They went down to the red zone and was working the Seahawks, all except for one play where they turned it over on downs. They won the game in the red zone with Jimmy Graham and some dude I never heard of. His last name was Bird. The hell? And
crazy catch.
Oh, that was a catch of the year. Goodness gracious, that was an amazing catch. He palmed that joint, crazy. But they also have a bad third down offense, the Bears do. Now, granted, these numbers are all with Justin Fields and Andy Dalton, so perhaps they're not that instructive. Still, they're bad on third down. They look like the best third down team ever against the Seahawks today. So many outlier things that were happening. Like today, the pass rush was good, but then the third down D was not. It was so puzzling. But I do think if you are going to make an argument for keeping Pete over Russ, it's that, he'll be a good defensive coach, which he has been. The problem is just the personnel side hasn't lined up, which makes it tricky to separate coaching from personnel. But that said, to this question, there's really not a great argument in that regard, because he just doesn't coach defense. He's just not the defensive coordinator, right? Like if you're going to be the head coach, you need to be good at both, or at least hire people and give them the autonomy to be good. You know what I mean? Like you could tell a Brandon Staley, or who's their defensive coordinator now over there? It's a black dude, Raheem Morris.
There we go. Yep.
And then you can tell like some coaches give the OC autonomy, or some defensive or some offensive coaches give the defensive coordinator, like in my McVay example, they give them autonomy. Here, bro, it's your defense. Make sure we don't give them no points. I don't really care what it looks like. I just hope they don't score. Pete's not doing that. Pete's like, hey, fix this, put that over there. Nope, fix that. All right, when it's not working, I'm about to step in. You can't do that. So while I do think there's a side of the ball Pete's really good at, when you're the head coach, you need to be good at both. Hell, he even got a kicker that can't kick now. Like, damn, man, the special team's not even gonna be good. Now, I don't think that's Pete's fault, but I mean,
Hey, did he pay that, man? No, I'm playing.
we paid him 4-year deal. I mean, dude, what, man? I think what's his name? What's the kicker's name right now? I can't even remember. Jason Myers.
Oh, yeah. How'd you forget that? I was confused. Like, what are you talking about? It's Jason. Yeah, okay.
I never really type his name, really. Jason Myers, I think I had the numbers up earlier on my computer. He's made like 68% of his field goals this year, which is like one of the worst in the league, like bottom 5 or something like that among dudes who have kicked the ball at least like twice. Yeah, come on, man. Like, there really isn't a great argument for keeping Russ over or keeping Pete over Russ. Because Pete's not never, but there's no signs that he'll eventually have both sides of the ball clicking. He hasn't had that for a while, and there's really no sign that he's going to get that turned around.
I know it's a continuous process, but can you name the point or a point where it all went wrong in the last few seasons?
Ooh, this is the
that haunt this team to this day.
This is the one I wanted Chris to put towards the front because it's so good. So really, they're asking for inflection points and how we got to where we are. And I think this is really relevant. Okay, I might go long on this one. I lied. But I'll do my best. I think there's like 10 inflection points that really have brought us to the point where this Russ and Pete thing just doesn't work. But I'll try and isolate 4 here. And I'm not really revealing a lot of new information. I just think that it's important that we note that this isn't just like, oh, one bad year among 10 years or 9 years prior of Russ and Pete winning a lot of games together. There's things that have led us to why this is done. So inflection point 1, Super Bowl 49. I think that's pretty clear. I think when he throws the interception and it's like Russ is almost like Pete falls on the sword for Russ in a way that rubs the defense wrong. And that's when Pete starts to lose the defense. It's important. First inflection point. I think the second one is the 2017 season. They were 9-7, didn't make the playoffs. And after the year, with the Legion of Boom kind of trending the other way, remember that's the Earl come get me year. Sherm gets hurt, Cam gets hurt, Cliff gets hurt. They trade Mike B. It's very clear that the Legion of Boom thing is done, and Pete could have decided, all right, we're gonna build around the guy who led us in touchdowns this year, who like led the league in passing touchdowns. We just build around Russ. That seemed like a time to double down on Russ, and Pete seemed to double down on Pete. Fired Bell. Fired who'd he fire at the time? Richard. Fired Chris Richard. And he brought in his guys. He brought in like his guy and Ken Norton, and then brought in Shoddy to reinforce the run game. It was almost like a reinforcement of himself as the authority figure in the building, more than it was an endorsement of the quarterback. That was inflection point 2, I think. Inflection point 3 is the playoff loss at Dallas. And while that's the game where it's like Russ is clearly the thing we should be building around. Clearly, we should be throwing it because Dallas cannot stop us throwing it. They can stop us running it because our O-line is getting wrecked in the run game. And Pete was like, nah, let's run this thing till the wheels fell off. The wheels almost fell off, and Russ basically came and damn near saved them. And Russ was hot about it, from what I can tell. And that game kind of birthed let Russ cook. I think inflection point 4, I'm skipping some, but this is probably the other big one, is probably the Buffalo game last year. That was at the height of let Russ cook. I mean, he had been eaten to that point. And that was the worst that let Russ cook has ever fared. And you can tell in that game, Pete was like, we're done with this. It was fun while it lasted. Like, oh, that was cute. Y'all did the little Russ thing. That's fine. He trademarked it. Yeah, it's fine. But we're going to start running it now. Either that or after the Rams game, the very next week. One of those two, they lost both. And Russ didn't play well in either one. But you could just tell that was the end. And you got to look at the let Russ cook thing from Russ's view to be like, yo, let Russ cook is about me. It's about a belief in my abilities. It's about the doubling down on me that I've expected you to do for years now and haven't. And at the first sign of trouble, you pivot from that. Even if the numbers don't suggest that they pivoted. Trust me. And even if you don't want to trust me on that, trust this. Russ believes they pivoted. And that's really all that matters. If he believes it, then it's freaking reality in the building, right? So take my word on that. I think those 4 points are kind of the most important like inflection points of how we got here to the point where at 5-10, this is not just a run-of-the-mill bad season. It's evidence that this particular partnership between Russ, Pete, and John Schneider, the GM, has run its course. Yeah, I went too long on that. But did I miss one?
You hit on the important ones.
Yeah, there's so many things that have led us here, like his Dan Patrick interview in the last offseason. That was really like, he basically was like, yo, the Seahawks ain't really getting this done. I'm kind of upset about it. And it was just like, bro, why would you do that? Like, why would you, all the leaks in the offseason last year, that contributed to our story, and the Colin Cowherd monologues and stuff like that, them going to Josh Allen's pro day in 2018, that didn't go well, fighting to get the no trade clause. Because I think perhaps that Russ probably knew he'd want to get out and want to control his fate. So there's a ton. There's a ton. But it's definitely not 1 year that it's just like, this is one bad year. No. This has kind of been building to this point.
What percentage of failure do you believe come from coaching? As in, if we keep the same personnel, what they coach, they can see us can reasonably hire, things are going to get better. But he's also frustrated. He or she's also frustrated about the play calls, and maybe Russ is no longer Russ.
Whew. Another loaded question. I don't know. What do you think? You think it's? I feel like the coach is not that. The roster is not that talented. I think we should
we talked about it off wax. We looked at the offensive line, middle to average. We went to the defensive line. It's cool. Middle line or linebackers, it's okay. You got Bobby, who's great. He makes up a lot of it. The DB room struggling. They're missing one of their best guys. The personnel is a big issue. But back to the point you mentioned earlier, Pete has had personnel control. It hasn't looked great. It isn't great. So when you bring that in totality, how much can you put on the players versus the scheme that he's putting them in with a talent he has when he picked that talent? You know what I'm saying?
It's tough.
So I remember, this is back to Russ's point, because he's a lot of people are losing faith in Russ, and I get it. He hasn't played well, but I remember, if I'm not mistaken, this was in Why Did I Get Married? I don't know if it was the first or second one, but Janet Jackson's character was like, hey, I want you to write, this is about one of the husbands that's, been going off the rails.
Yeah, that's in the first movie. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. She's like, write down all the good things that this person does, and then write down all the bad. And if the good outweighs the bad, it's simple. Now, if the bad outweighs the good, you got a
lawyer, and file for divorce. Right.
Come on. I challenge everyone right now that's like, oh, get Russ out of here. It's simple. Write down all the good things Russ can do. All of them. It might be 10 things. It might be 120. And then I want you to write down the bad. And if it comes out that the good outweighs the bad, look across the league. And Mike, you touched on this off wax.
There's some bad around the league, boy, let me tell you.
There is some bad around the league. And once you figure that out, ask yourself, do you really want to get rid of Russ right now and just bank on the Seahawks drafting somebody, the Seahawks making a good trade, and then having a quarterback who you kind of trust in that can get you back to what you guys would want as a Super Bowl, if I'm not mistaken, because that's all Russ wants.
Right.
Hell, he named his kid Win. Russ wants to win.
A little weird, but
it's weird, but
it gets to the point of how much obsessed
if you really want to bank on someone else coming in, and again, you've written down all the good and all the bad, and you said, you know what? Russ's good outweighs his bad by 1 point. That's all you need to know. That's it. Because you can look across the league and see there's bad, bad, bad. All he does is okay. There's maybe 5 to 6 elite quarterbacks in this game right now. Unfortunately, Russ is one of the good ones, but he's having a really bad year. Aaron Rodgers, if I'm not mistaken, had a bad year. What was it, 2 seasons ago?
Yeah, like 2 bad years in a row.
Needless to say, Aaron Rodgers is back on top, but what did they do? They made a decision to keep Aaron Rodgers their guy and make a new decision with the coaching and the staff. It's worked out. The Seahawks have that same opportunity coming, and maybe this is something Jody Allen can do. I don't know. It might work for her. Write down all the good between each guy, figure out, okay, what do I want to do with it? You see that personnel changes. Do I want to keep Pete, knowing that we've had years of draft issues and problems? And you asked me off wax, hey, Chris, who have the Seahawks signed as a free agent that was like, damn, that was money? And I was like, damn, Mike, I don't know.
It's Cliff and Mike B. We really can't think of nothing
And that's after, 4 to 5 minutes is looking at each other like, damn, let's actually look this up. Yeah, Mike B and Cliff. And how long ago was that? A very long time ago. It's now 2022, damn near. It is 2022. I'm going to just say it. They got to do something. So that would be my point there. It comes with Pete's philosophy, what he's done personnel-wise. I would put a little more percentage with Pete Carroll. He is the main one in this whole entire scenario where everything has gone pretty sour this season and prior seasons. Why they haven't gotten far as they needed to. Sure, Russ, you can make the blame for him, but the offensive line hasn't been great. There's just a bunch of problems. And if you want to make change, starts with the snake, cut off the head of the snake, and that's Pete Carroll, unfortunately. And they got to make a change.
So I think he's the head because he also is the personnel. That's why that question was so tricky. Because it's like, put it this way. If John controlled the roster and Pete had nothing to do with it, I would argue in favor of getting rid of John and keeping Pete and Russ. I'd be like, the coach is not that bad. Like, oh, he didn't have nothing to do with this? He just, bro, look at I'm going to read you the secondary of that. I'm going to read you Seattle's starting secondary today. Starting safeties, Quandre Diggs, Ryan Neal. Starting corners, Sidney Jones, John Reed, and Ugo Amadi. Now, if you'd have told me that's what John gave Pete to work with, now they got some COVID and injuries. Like, I get it. It's not handpicked that was their starters, but you get my point. Like, you give me that, and you say, hey, Pete didn't have nothing to do with that. He's just out here working with what he's got.
It's a big difference.
I would hear you out. Al Woods, Poona Ford, Brian Monet, like these are all undrafted or older veteran dudes who are up front. They making the scheme work. Darryl Taylor, Carlos Dunlap for a 7th round pick. They're making things work with some of the talent. But when you tell me Pete's also responsible for it, well, then I can't separate the two. But like that's the best way I can put it. If you had told me Pete doesn't control the roster, he's just working with what John give him, then I would have told you get John about the paint after the Eddie Lacy contract. He was putting incentives in Eddie Lacy's deal to say, hey man, if you're not fat every month, here's 50 G's. What? I would have got that dude out of here back then. Yeah. So that's what makes that question so tricky. It's like Pete does do some really good things as a coach, even if his philosophy is not like Brandon Staley, John Harbaugh type Bill Belichick that I would actually prefer. He still does some good things. The problem is it was you who agreed to sign Luke Jokel. It was you who gave Ed Dixon that 3-year deal. It was you who gave Greg Olsen the $7 million. It was you who signed Ziggy Ansah for like $9 million. Like all of these moves, like it was you who, traded for Quentin Dunbar. And then he didn't fit your style. It was you who signed Akella Witherspoon, and you got rid of him for whatever reason.
Before the season started.
It was you who believed in Trey Flowers over and over and over again. It was you who drafted LJ Collier and Rashad Penny. Like, if it's you doing that and Jermaine Ifedi, then I should get you out of here. You're the problem, but you're also the coach. So it's like double the blame lands on him. It's a little unfair, but it's not because that's what you ask for when you take this job out of USC because you want all that power. With power comes responsibility. To quote, what's that? Spider-Man?
Yes, sir. One of the best films. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So that question's tricky. Spent a lot of time on it, but it's an important one. It's hard to distinguish between Pete the coach, Pete the personnel guy. That's why we just got to put all on him. Forget it.
Here we go.
If we can't distinguish.
Let's stay with the front office. How would we try to improve this team in the offseason?
So you basically asked me if I was Jody. If I was Jody Allen, not Jody from Baby Boy. If I was Jody Allen, I would shout out to everyone who gets that reference. If I was Jody Allen, I would probably fire Pete and probably John. And I say this without knowing who did the really bad picks. Because this is the other thing about the draft room. You never really know who okayed a guy. You never know how many times John was like, Pete, take this guy. Take this guy. He's money. I promise you, he's money. And then Pete's like, I don't know, John. You sure? Trust me, Pete. And then it's Malik McDowell. Right? Like, or how many times Pete was like, John, I hear you, but let's go with my guy. Right. And then it turns out that it's, LJ Collier. Yeah. Stephon Sullivan in the 7th round. But I'm looking at some higher picks like the same year that like Eddie Jackson got drafted. I think they took like Lano Hill. It's like maybe John wanted Eddie, and then Pete wouldn't let him, or Pete wanted Eddie and Leno, you know what I mean? Like there's been I don't know how to distinguish between, like, even this year. Maybe John wanted Creed Humphrey, right? Maybe you don't like Ethan Posick. Maybe Pete was like, I don't know, I like this Eskridge kid, you know, or maybe it was vice versa. I don't know. And Jody would know, I think. Either way, until we know, fire them both.
I would actually.
Y'all were both there, so I'll get rid of you both, you guys.
I will stick with what I said. I think last week or 2 weeks ago, I would let go of Pete. And this is, of course, assuming that, to Mike's point, I'm not there. He's not in the war room. We don't know who is making decisions. But let's just assume that Pete is ruler, makes all the shots. John's like, that's your guy. Take him. Sure. Go ahead. I would, honestly, if I could, I would try to keep Pete and just make him a head coach. Now, I know there's a lot of discussion of, well, Pete would never do that. Like, you're telling Pete to step down from the position he's at with all the power, all decision-making. He would never do that. Maybe he would, maybe he wouldn't. That would be my first offer. Second offer, Schneider, you run control of all the personnel decisions from draft, free agents. You handle all that. Pete, you just coach. Russ, you play quarterback. Simple. We run it back. That's what I would try to do. Now, again, I know people are probably thinking, well, that's never going to happen. So my next step, we're going to get Pete up out of the paint. We're going to keep Schneider, get a new head coach, and keep Russ. That's what I would end up trying to do.
I'm with you on that. Yeah, I just don't think there's a world where trading your franchise quarterback, even if you think he's flawed. Every guy is flawed. Pick a franchise quarterback. I'll find a flaw for you. You know, and I think trading the one you got, while he's still probably got at least 4 prime years left.
I would say at minimum, maybe 2 or 3.
Yeah, at minimum 2 or 3 prime years, and then he can still just be a good quarterback into like age 38, 39, whatever. So
yeah. I'm not willing to punt on Russ and be like, hey, you know, get him out of here and bring in, I don't know.
No, we got a question about Stopgap, guys.
We'll get to that.
Yeah.
Let's stick with the Russ, John, Pete thing. How long until the Russ, John, Pete media propaganda campaigns begin?
Ooh, this is a good one because Seahawks fans are smart. We can see through the BS, or I shouldn't lump myself in the fan thing, but like us in the Seahawks world, we can kind of tell where the leak is coming from, and if Colin Cowherd says something, or if Jason Lockenfor at CBS writes something, which he did this morning, or Mike Garafolo or Palacero and NFL Network, we can read between the tea leaves around here. And it's really interesting because it's like it makes for a healthier dialogue. Right, we can kind of tell when like Mark Rogers leaks something, or if like John Schneider leaks something, or something came from the team or from Russ or somewhere in between. It's so fascinating. To answer the question, I think that the Russ campaign is already kind of getting a little bit of legs. Like I said, Jason Lockenfor wrote his thing this morning. I forget, it was kind of a nothing burger, but the fact that it was even something kind of Russy, it was like, Russ isn't going to get an extension because he don't really want one from these guys. That was the kind of the theme of the piece, I believe. It's already starting. I will point out this though. It's not to throw it all on John, but I don't think the media leak talk through someone else thing is really Pete's game. I don't think he likes doing that. I just don't think he's not a social media guy. He doesn't even he's got media people that he like, but I think that's not really his bag. I think that's more the other way. If anything, it's going to be John. Now, I mean, not to say Pete doesn't talk to anybody in the media. I know he does, or at least I strongly believe he does. I don't know that for a fact, but I know that they have ways of getting out their messages if they need something put out, and it's not always national media. But I think because Russ has already started, we're going to start to see the front office side here pretty soon. What time is it? It's Sunday night.
10:08.
Yeah, by Monday morning, Tuesday morning, this is when it starts. It's going to start very soon to answer that question. And we're going to be able to tell. You won't even have to ask me, Mike, what's this mean? Do you think this is no? It's going to be very obvious. It's going to be some report worded in a weird, funky way from somebody national or in some Peter King column. That's another national person to watch out for. That's going to have these sources. And I'll have mine too, but you guys know I hold on to mine until I have a story to write. And I share what I can in the pod. So it's going to start soon, though, to answer that question. And it's going to be fun. I think it's not going to be as bad as last year because I'm a little bit more in position to talk about it. Whereas last year, I basically had to wait like 3 months to kind of let the cat out of the bag that Russ was pissed. This time, we're kind of all along for the ride. And I also think that more people are accepting of the end than last year. Last year, there were a lot of people telling us that Colin Cowherd was tripping and Brandon Marshall's little monologue didn't mean nothing. And Russ is just, he's just frustrated getting hit. Who wouldn't be? It's like, no, guys, those were breadcrumbs leading us to a trail. I think now everyone knows what the breadcrumbs are. So it'll make, if we don't have to like deal with all the people saying, Mike, media blew that up. No, he didn't. Russ wanted it blown up for whatever reason. And that, and we have to pay attention to that.
Could this be the straw that leads to Jody pulling the plug on Pete in the offseason? And if they stick with my idea of keeping the front office, are they naive enough to rely on Penny next season despite 3+ years of nagging injuries?
So I'm gonna answer the Penny one first because that's pretty. If Pete stays, yeah, I think Pete loves Rashad, and would certainly bring him back based on how he's performing in the month of December. He's performing really well. I think only Sonny Michel and Jonathan Taylor are the running backs with more rushing yards in the month of December than Rashad Penny. He's running really well. Is that enough for me? If I was running the team to sign, no. I would just keep drafting running backs from Bama, Wisconsin, Ohio State. I would just take pick one of those schools every year and just draft the guy from there. You'd be fine in the running back draft. The first part of that is this. It says Jody gonna pull the plug. So here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody made this point to me after the game today that like what's unlikely probably is that Jody gets rid of John and Pete in the same offseason because she's not like a Jerry Jones or a Jim Irsay or even a Robert Kraft, who's like, these owners are really hands-on with this stuff. Like Jerry Jones talks after the games. Like that's how involved he is with the, like, I think Chris Ballard did too, or no, he's a GM. What did I say? Irsay. He might have even talked after the Colts one. Like these guys are kind of more involved. Jody's not that. She's like never given a press conference ever for the Blazers or the Seahawks, that she would want to keep at least one of them so that she has someone she trusts in the building. And I think that was a valid point that I hadn't considered until today, because I was like, get rid of them both, as I said earlier on this show. But I could see a world where Jody's like, you know what? I need at least one of y'all because I need someone I can lean on, to get this thing back going. I don't know who that would be. Maybe that's John, maybe that's Pete. Honestly, I'm just speculating. I have no idea if that is the case or that she would have to pick one of them. But if she did, like that makes sense to me. Like even Chris shaking his head just now when I said that makes sense too. Like I'm not just going to overhaul the whole thing because like football is not really my bag. So I need somebody who knows this that I can trust to help me through weather this storm. That would make sense unless she was to hire someone from outside. But who the hell is she going to hire? So it does make sense to think that like she would part with one of them, just to have someone in there she could trust still. That makes sense to me. I just don't know who it would be.
We're all going to in for a wild ride this offseason.
My guess is it would be Pete, but I have nothing really to base that on. I'm just kidding.
Is this the most disappointing Seahawks season in franchise history? Losing 10 to 12 games in a season where you're expected to compete for a conference championship and don't have your first-round pick is a special kind of disaster.
I don't know if it's the worst ever. They went 2-14, I think, before a couple of times. I know when Cortez won Defensive Player of the Year, I think they were like 2-14. The 90s in general were just a bad year or bad decade for the franchise. Considering the expectations, though, it is pretty disappointing. They made a lot of win now decisions, punting on draft picks for veterans from Quandre to Carlos, to even getting Clowney and not re-signing him, or even Sheldon Richardson and Dwayne. Over the last 5 seasons, they've made a lot of fuck it, let's deal with it later decisions. And now later has come and they haven't gotten any closer to the championship than they did in 2014. So in that regard, yes, it is definitely the most disappointing season of the last 20 years, perhaps. Because I also think they went with 4-12, one of Holmgren's years. I want to say maybe 6-10. The Jim Mora year was awful. It was 4-12, something like that. So they've lost a lot of games before. But I think considering the expectations, yeah, this is pretty bad. Not the worst loss, but I do think that for all of the win now moves that they made, moves that I was in favor of, the Dwayne move, the Clowney move, even the Sheldon Richardson move at the time. I thought these were all I'm with that. I'm with the push the, swipe it on a credit card. Let's deal with it later. Let's try to win. They just didn't. But now someone has to pay for that. So, you've done some losing. So I don't know if it's the worst in history. I just think that it's the result of, these win now moves, not resulting in any winning. or at least enough winning to justify the transactions. That's how I should word that.
No, I feel that 100%. Do you have any insights on how this season and Russ and Pete's public disagreements are viewed by other players on the team?
Ooh, this is a good question. Yes, I do. But they are, as you would imagine, with a locker room with so many people, they're all over the place. Some guys are really tuned in to what's going on in the media and Russ and Pete. And other guys are kind of too young to care, just like, hey, is Russ the QB? Then all right, cool, I'm here, They love Pete. They don't really know too much about Russ to be critical of him. The guys who are critical of him are gone, for the most part. And the guys who are critical of Pete are gone for the most part. And then a lot of the veteran guys have come here from other teams. So they're like, shoot, I'm here from the Jets or the Bengals or the Jaguars or the Lions. So they're like, I like it here better than where I came from, even if they've got their gripes. I think it's all over the place. Some guys care. Some guys don't. Some guys are very upset about what Russ said as it pertains to their position group. Not necessarily that he said anything, that he said something about their position group. Even Dwayne talked about that on the record. So Dwayne Brown. So I don't think anyone was like, how could Russ break rule number 1, protect the team? I really don't think it was that this offseason. That was probably a Pete thing mostly, like, hey, keep this stuff in-house if you're beefing. I do think, though, that the reason that a lot of guys were so indifferent with all the stuff that Russ kind of stirred up himself in the offseason was that he's so good. It was like, well, you're Russell Wilson. If you want to get vent on the Dan Patrick show, then vent, brother. That's what happens when you ball out, throw 40 touchdowns in a year. Okay, but if you're going to do that, then you got to come back and ball. He didn't come back and ball. And I think that the losing has probably gotten a lot of guys to be like, hey, man, what's up? You can't talk like how you talked and then come back and look like how you look. You know what I mean? And I haven't really necessarily heard that directly, but I do think, and hearing from some guys about the offseason, mostly off the record stuff, that would make sense that it shifts. Yeah, a lot of guys weren't really tripping off some of that Russ stuff. They just wanted to know, hey, are you going to be the quarterback or not? Because I'm a free agent. And I'd like to sign or not sign or know what's up. You know what I mean?
I'm out of here.
Yeah, and then he told guys, yeah, I'm here, and he came back, Like Bobby said he called him, Dwayne called him, like a lot of stuff's on the record stuff too. But I think it didn't rub guys too much the wrong way, but I imagine that if it happens now, it will. Because you can't come back and play poorly after all that.
Who is more annoyed? Russ with Pete or Pete with Russ? We know Russ, the role actually, we're just going to stick with that. Who is more annoyed, Russ with Pete or Pete with Russ?
And this is a very important question. The answer is not complex. The answer is Russ with Pete. Pete, I believe, would like to have Russ as his quarterback going forward. And I think a really telling, vulnerable moment that Pete had was after, do you remember which game this was after, where he was like, I've been here a long time, but if I didn't have Russ, I wouldn't have been here that long. I would have been fired a while ago or something like that. I can't remember what game that was. You could probably find it.
I'll look it up.
That was a really humbling moment because he's right. It got you about to paint like 2016 or something like that. If Russ never came.
Oh, yeah, it was to the Saints. That's right.
It was lost to the Saints? Yeah.
So the Saints, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that was an admission. Like, even this offseason, Pete didn't want to trade Russ, because he knows Russ's value. And even after this, he just knows Russ can play better. He's always thought that. So even when Russ has had great years. So I think that the obvious answer is Russ with Pete. Not to say that Pete probably doesn't get tired of some of the stuff Russ does, specifically in the media. I bet you that bothers Pete more than anything. Like, dude, if you got a problem, call me. Do not call Tom Pelissero or whatever. I don't know if Russ loves him, but you know what I mean? Like, that's really probably Pete's beef more than some of the performance stuff, because he knows quarterbacks are hard. It's a hard position to play. I think that's probably he's probably got some other gripes, but that's probably the main one. Whereas I don't think Russ trusts the organization. I asked him this in February. That's also not new. I asked him during his Walter Payton Man of the Year thing. I said, hey, do you trust the Seahawks to build a contender around you? I got his response right here. Hold up.
Didn't he do some dancing?
No. Well, he either lied or danced. It depends on how you want to. Here, let's see. He said, he talked for a long time. You're right, but he said this quote. If you ask me about the trust factor of it all, I've always put my trust in the Seahawks trying to do whatever it takes to win. Hopefully that will continue. That's a key part. Part of that is how we go about the protection part of it and figuring those little things out like that. End quote. So, yes, to an extent was his answer. But if I keep getting hit, then no. Right? And then whose job is it to get him protection? Pete. So I think Russ is kind of at the point where a lot of us are at. It was like, how do we separate Pete the coach from Pete the personnel guy? And if you're Russ, it doesn't freaking matter because you get hit regardless. Like that. So that's kind of Russ's is thing. And I think that it's comments like that compared to what Pete said about Russ about, how I wouldn't be here without number 3, pretty much. It shows that one side is pushing for the divorce a little harder. And I think this offseason really showed it. But then you look at Pete's comment during the year, I thought that was really telling. Like, I'd be fired if it wasn't for Russ. Whereas Russ seems to be adamant. It's like, yeah, you should be fired. Or get me out of here, one of the two.
Even if Russ doesn't force his way out this offseason, is there any way he gets to a point of wanting to re-sign with the Hawks again in the next 2 years or so?
I think that it's results based. If Pete's gone, and maybe if John's gone too, I don't know. Or if John's gone and Pete stays, I don't know. And they get a new GM, maybe he puts his faith in that new guy. Perhaps maybe that new guy listens to Russ a little bit more. I think there's specific things that Russ would want, to want to resign. I think it's better protection, but also like to feel like he's got a voice. I think something we reported in that February story last year too was that Russ talked to Pete or talked to somebody in the organization, probably Pete, after the Super Bowl and was like, hey, what's the plan here? What's going on? And he, whatever they told him, he didn't get a sufficient answer. He didn't feel like he was involved. Yeah. And that's after he helped pick Shane Waldron. And even then, he only had to help pick Shane Waldron because you fired the guy he liked. You know what I mean? So I just feel like he would want to feel more involved. Very similar to how Aaron Rodgers said in his long press conference earlier this year. He was just like, look, they are making personnel moves that affect my ability to do my job without consulting me. Yeah. I don't like that. That's basically what Aaron Rodgers said. I'm paraphrasing. Russ the same way. Hey, man, if you're going to pick the O-line and I'm the one who gets hit if they stink, can I get a voice? I think a new GM or coach combo would have to appease Russ in that way to get him to want to stay.
Why was DK non-existent?
Oh, man. So this question is about the game today. DK caught a ball in the first quarter. He caught a ball in the first play of the second quarter and never caught another ball again. And yes, that happened against the Bears. But, Chris, we could have probably said that after half the damn games this year.
It's watching the film, there have been countless times where I'm like, yo, my man is wide open. I remember we had Doug Baldwin on about a month and a half ago, and it might have been on the show or off wax. No, it was on the show.
It was on the show.
He was telling us about the matchup against Darrelle Revis, how he was preparing for it because he knew Darrelle Revis was one of the best corners at that time. Still is what goes down one of the great ones. He had his own island, Revis Island. Mm-hmm. And Doug was like, yeah, man, I was ready for it. I did my studies. I was prepared.
This was in the Super Bowl 49, by the way.
In the Super Bowl. Yeah. He says, y'all go back and watch the tape. I was working his ass. When you go back and watch the tape, Doug Baldwin was not exaggerating. There were times where I'm like, if he throws him the ball, this is a touchdown. This is a first down. This is a big play. That same thing has been happening with DK this season.
Yes.
DK is wide open, and the ball does not come his way. I rewatched the Rams game from last Tuesday. I could count maybe 5 off top right now without looking at my notes or anything, just off top, that DK was wide open, and Russ did not throw him the ball. I have no answers for you as to why he doesn't get the ball. The answer for me would be, I'm throwing him the ball every time. As you see with Devontae Adams, arguably the best receiver in the game, Cooper Kupp. All these guys, they get the ball week in, week out. They get 10-plus targets. There are, you know where the ball is going, and you still can't stop it. The Seahawks decide not to do that. I really don't have a reason for you. We talked about it on the radio station. Mike talks about it on here. I have no other words to express why the Seahawks decide, we 3 targets, 2 targets, not enough. That is someone you drafted to make your team better, make your offense explosive, and you decide, we're not going to get him the ball as much as possible. I don't understand it. Mike, take it away.
So you are correct. It's just it's dumbfounding. I think that one thing that stands out between DK and some other guys who have like a number 2, if you consider Tyler the number 1, that's fine. But just for all intents and purposes, like Devontae doesn't have like a dope ass number 2, and neither does. I mean, even look at the games that Justin Jefferson plays without Adam Thielen, or look at some of these Keenan Allen games, or like even Terry McLaurin's whole career for the most part, like, or AJ Brown's first couple of years before they got Julio. There's just getting them the ball always looks easier. Like even when DK gets the ball, it just feels like, damn, did it have to be that hard? And every once in a while, there's like a little slant, and you're like, yo, why aren't we running that? To be fair, they did run one to him today. He dropped it, but I think the complex thing about DK is it was Chris Sims who tweeted a route chart after the Rams game, and he basically was like, the Cooper Kupp can run everything all over the field, and they basically tell DK to run straight on this side and run straight over here. And Chris is not wrong. Chris Sims, I mean, he's not wrong. But I do think that we have to ask ourselves, why is that? Is it because DK can't run a bigger route tree, or is it because a lot of his route tree is best suited currently for what Russ likes to throw? And I don't really have a good answer for that. I'm just throwing that out there. Like, if let's say DK did run a bunch of whip routes and pivots and digs and seams, would Russ throw them? Like who knows? No one on the team really runs a bunch of dig routes and seams and stuff. Why is that? Is it because Shane's an idiot? Probably not. Is it because he's playing to the strengths of the quarterback? Probably so. So I think that's my guess. But either way, I think that's an important question to consider when looking at why DK goes these long stretches, because if you are only asking this guy to basically operate outside the numbers or routes that only basically go out there, whether he starts inside or not, that's very tough. That's a hard part of the field to hit consistently, whereas you look at some of these other guys who do work the entire field. Why is that? Is because their quarterback's more comfortable with that? Probably so. Your offense is a product of your quarterback's strengths and weaknesses by and large. So while I think that that's an issue, it's not, the answer there is not easy, but I do think it probably starts actually with the quarterback more than it does with the scheme or the play caller.
Let's go back to the quarterback. Do you think Russ would play much better with a different scheme?
I thought about this after we went over it pre-show, and my answer is it's not shifted, but I still think the answer is no. But I do think that, because I think he needs better protection, I think. And I think what he specifically needs is something to make him a bit more comfortable attacking that middle. That's my thing. So like a possession receiver is how it's termed. So someone like when he had in Golden Tate, what he had in Doug Baldwin, who's a good possession receiver right now? Someone I can't think of. Hell, even like a Cole Beasley.
I was going to say Cole Beasley.
Yeah, I was like, I gotta think of somebody white right here. No, I wasn't. But yeah, Keenan Allen, like guys with some wiggle, guys who just like, all right, bro, I'm butt naked open in the middle. You just got to throw it to me. And he's had that. He had that in a Doug. He had that in a Golden Tate, even though Golden Tate was really good outside the numbers too. So I think that it's not even about scheme as much as it is a little bit of personnel, and then mostly personnel up front, and then personnel with the receiving group. And I think that's why he likes Jimmy so much. Honestly, like Jimmy's the only guy on the team that was in his wedding, which has always been weird to me.
And he's talking about Jimmy Graham, folks.
Yeah, Jimmy's like Jimmy Graham and Kristen Michael, maybe Robert Turbin. I think it was Jimmy Graham and Robert Turbin were the only guys on the team in his wedding. Like those guys a lot. Turbo, I don't know how they got so close, but I know him and Jimmy got close. Probably was like, damn, I ain't got to worry about throwing over the middle from throwing to Jimmy. And I don't want to overplay the throwing over the middle thing, but like I think we had Sam Gold talk about this.
Yes,
it is a thing. It's not the end all be all, but I do think that if you want Russ to operate at a bit higher level, that position in particular has to be addressed. A guy with some wiggle who makes him a little bit more comfortable taking a few more risks over the middle. Because it's not that he can't see; he can see. It's just like who is he comfortable? Seeing? Yeah, like someone to make him a bit more comfortable.
Yeah, I don't know. I do think, for example, we talked about it off wax. he played for like the Saints or something, he might be money.
Yeah, but throwing to who though? Marquez Callaway, whatever the hell, like
Shoot, give it to Alvin Kamara.
Come on, but Michael Thomas is the ideal one.
If he's back healthy, yeah.
Yeah.
So
He is healthy. He just don't want to play for Drew Brees. But yeah, or excuse me, for Sean Payton. But yeah, like that type of guy, Keenan Allen again. Like I think those dudes, OBJ.
Hey,
Yeah, I mean, look at me. Third down throw, Stafford throws to OBJ, guys.
how many touchdowns does he have? Oh, quite a bit, huh?
I think his third down catches are more instructive in this particular exercise. But yeah, I think that personnel. That's why I really wanted OBJ for Russ or AB, another guy gets open. I mean, AB being a weirdo aside, we're just talking
Doesn't
about football side. Yeah, he fits. I think yes. To answer the question, I do think the answer is actually no. I don't think it's a scheme as much as he just needs to feel more comfortable in those obvious passing situations. And I do think that some personnel changes there would help. Protection and different targets.
Speaking of third down, has there ever been a time where Russ was good on third downs? What was different then to now?
Okay, yes. I looked this up and I got the numbers in front of me. So I have Russ's EPA per dropback for our people who's not super into the advanced stats. EPA is expected points added, using it per dropback, and it basically just puts like a per play value on different on every snap. So it's not just like if you run on 3rd and 18, right, and you pick up 11 yards, it's like, ooh, you average 11 yards a carry. Well, no, the team just punted. After you ran the ball versus a 3-yard run on 3rd and 2, right? Moves the sticks, just how many points you're projecting to add to your team. If you're moving the sticks, you're projected to add more points, as opposed to, well, we're giving up the ball now. That's a short version of that. So anyway, that's one metric to measure how good Russ has been on third down. I think that's a little better than like yards per attempt and some stuff. So his EPA per dropback was its highest on third down. And I'm going to do, I'm separating this by 3rd and like 4 and greater. So I have the filter on what's this 4 to 99 yards. So this is basically eliminates like short yardage stuff. So nothing 3rd and 3 or shorter, because I think these obvious passing situations are a little bit more instructive here. So I have 2012, he was money. 2018, he was money. And 2015, he was money. And then 2014 and 13, he was okay. And then 2020, 19, 16, 17, and 21, he's been bad. 2021 being the worst of all of his seasons by far. So what was the difference? I think that Doug played in all of the good seasons. So
Shout out Doug.
Yeah, there's that. I think Golden Tate played in one of them. But yeah, I think having a guy with that wiggle has helped. I mean, honestly, Doug played in all of the good seasons and none of the bad seasons. So that might be the now that I'm thinking about this a little bit more. Yeah, his 5 worst seasons, or 3 of his 5 worst seasons, he didn't have a Doug or a Golden Tate. But I do think protection has mattered in some of this stuff. In 2018, he ran the ball a little bit more, a little bit better. But his completion percentage was better in all of these too. I really think that, and then I think this factors in scrambles as well. Oh no, this is passing per drop back. So anyway, long story short, he's had about 3 seasons where he was really good, and there's really no common thread in those. There were 2 different coordinators, a lot of different personnel. I think only one of those seasons he had Jimmy Graham. He had Doug for all of them, the Golden Tate for one of them. He was a rookie in one year, like 8 in another. So it's not a common theme that I can say without diving into doing a whole podcast on it. But yes, he has been good in those situations before. I think that the personnel that he has now, coupled with the O-lines, has just not really worked for him in that regard since then, since about 2018.
Is Russ's current play affecting the market for any potential trades this offseason?
Ooh. Oh, you know what? Sorry, one more thing on that. I do think the increase in too high shells, split safety looks, has kind of adjusted. I think defensive coordinators are getting a lot better at saying, hey, Russ, here's what you're not good at, or here's what we're going to give you, taking away his strength. I think, and that's around the league, though. I think that's happening. Right. Look at this year. No quarterback's freaking killing it. And I think that's part of that. Sorry, read that one for me one more time.
No worries. It was Oh, shoot. Let me find it again. Is Russ's current play affecting the market for any potential trades this offseason?
I don't think so. I think how far removed are we from Jamal Adams getting traded for 2 firsts, playing safety, and Jalen Ramsey, Khalil Mack, Laramie Tunsil, or whatever his name is, the left tackle plays.
You got it right.
Yeah, Tunsil. All those guys getting traded for 2 firsts. A quarterback is getting traded for 2 firsts. Put it this way: Jared Goff stinks. Who else stinks? Sam Darnold stinks. Carson Wentz stinks. Those guys got traded for hauls, pretty much. The Jared Goff one's tricky because they gave up Stafford, but even look at Carson Wentz. The Colts basically gave up a first-round pick to get Carson Wentz, who was booty, and basically he got progressively worse since 2017. Bad. He and Sam Darnold were 2 of the worst starters in the league in 2020, and 2 separate general managers were like, "Hey, we need you. You are the answer to our quarterback problem." What? So yeah, even Russ in a year where he's not like full on Russ, still like a Pro Bowl alternate, like I don't think he should have been, but whatever. Like that shows you that people still think highly of him. And honestly, trade value is all about how people think of you. It doesn't matter what the reality is. It's how people value you. And if Carson Wentz, after that 2020 season, could basically get traded for like a first, yeah, Russ is netting like 2 or 3 of them bad boys, even though he's kind of limping to the finish line.
Let's go back to Pete a little bit and success for challenges. The success rate. Do you have the stat on that, Mike? And if so, what are Pete's stats and how do they compare to his peers, average? I understand why he throws a red flag or whatever else in his pocket, but it seems like it's usually on plays that have little likelihood of reversal. Let's see if the stats back it up.
Okay, so I don't have this relative to his peers. Sorry about that. Just because that'll take me a little bit too long, and I don't feel like asking anybody how to find it off the top of my head. But I do know that he is 147 challenges out of 100. So that's with the Seahawks. I think he was 2 of 5 in New England, so he didn't challenge that much.
Well, maybe you should go back to that method.
Doesn't look like he had any with the Jets. I guess it was only 1 year. Yeah, he's not good at challenges. I mean, that's one of those, the numbers like kind of tell the story. I think whoever asked that is really getting at the meat of it. Is that like sometimes it'd be challenges like, Pete, you're not winning this. And sometimes he's even said it after the game. It was like, I don't know, screw it. I took a chance. It was like, what? The way Pete uses timeouts in general, whether it's challenges or end of game situations, end of half stuff. Pete loves burning the timeout like early in the third quarter to avoid like a 5-yard delay a game. It's like, bro, you need that. Let's take the 5 yards, bro. What are you doing? So yeah, that's his record. I think 47-53 is what that comes out to. I don't know that percentage relative to other coaches. I can find that. Whoever asked that, tweet me that tomorrow, and I think I will be able to find that. Maybe I'll have Mike Sandel help me out with that. But yeah, bottom line is, what Pete goes with his gut better, and it's just the most random thing. His record reflects a guy going with his gut, pretty much.
Unbearable.
Like, there's really no rhyme or reason, methodology that's consistent. It's just like, should I throw this? Sure. I don't even have a flag. Here, I'm going to throw a stick of gum at the ref and tell him I want to challenge. It's just, there's no consistency there, and the record kind of reflects that. Although it's just slightly under 500, so not terrible, but yeah, it's the challenges that he loses. It's one's like, bro, what are you doing? We could use that timeout in this situation.
They could have used that timeout on Sunday against the Bears for damn sure, because he lost the challenge on the QB sneak. But of course, Twitter questions would not be Twitter questions if no one asked about Russ being traded. So if Russ gets traded, who would be your ideal stopgap guy who's going to get you through 2022? Now, let me stop you right there. Get you through. What do you mean by get you through? Because if you want to think about it, if you want to get through 2022, sure, you can get through it. You might have 6 wins, depending on who you go with. And hopes of getting Bryce Young in 2023, I'm not so sure you want to go about that route. That stopgap, I'm telling you, man. I talked about it earlier on one of the Twitter questions I responded with, writing down all the good and all the bad between Russ and what he does, and then looking across the league and looking at what these other guys are doing. I don't think you want to do a stopgap unless you just want to blow it up and have a full restart and you're okay with the next 3 to 4 years. You're rebuilding, no playoffs. You won't see a Super Bowl until maybe 2030 and beyond.
So there was a player. I'm not going to name the player. This was he was about to be an unrestricted free agent, and they had lost their final game of the year. And he was like, "Mike, I'm telling you, they don't bring me back. The grass is not greener on the other side." And I'll tell Chris who the player is. I'm sorry, guys.
Why you gotta tease him like that?
Because if I tell them the player, they'll miss the point. Now that player was wrong for what it's worth. He was wrong. He was very wrong. But
I was not expecting that.
Yeah, I think that's what people have to consider about Russ. The grass is just not greener. It's really not. So let's consider some stopgap guys, shall we?
Oh boy, let's
bring up some unrestricted free agents, some pending unrestricted free agents at the quarterback position. All right. Ben Roethlisberger, Ryan
retire,
Andy Dalton, Nick Foles, Cam Newton, Tyrod, Jameis off a torn ACL, Jacoby Brissett, Teddy. There's a lot of black quarterbacks. That was like 5 in a row. Marcus Mariota, Flacco, Trubisky. Oh man, I could see Pete trying out Trubisky. Whoever the hell Tim Boyle is. I don't know who that is. Blaine Gabbert, Glennon, Gino.
Okay. We get it. It's not green.
Sean Mannion.
Oh, stop.
Dwayne Haskins.
Didn't even pan out with the football team. Not worth it.
Yeah. So those are your stopgap guys. Now there's some other guys who may be available via trade. Jimmy G, who actually I think is a decent stopgap.
No.
You know, as a stopgap.
Yeah, stopgap. How many interceptions? Oh yeah, you know what? We're gonna lose because Jimmy G threw 2 really bad interceptions. Thanks though. We have a stopgap. No,
I hear you. Teddy's an interesting one. But my thing is, if I acquire a quarterback, I just want my quarterback problem to be solved.
Wouldn't that be nice?
I just don't like getting a guy knowing he's not the guy. You know what I mean? Like that's just stupid to me. If I'm gonna get a guy, I want him to be my guy. That was always my problem with Carolina's trade for Darnold and Denver's trade for Teddy. It was like you traded for a guy knowing he's not the guy. Now, in Carolina's case, they probably thought Sam was, and that was stupid. But like I just don't like doing that. Even in 2018, when the Browns signed Tyrod, and they had the first overall pick, so they knew they could have took Lamar, Josh Rosen, Darnold, Baker, or Josh Allen. They knew they had a chance at a quarterback. It's not like they had to wait. No, you knew you had the top pick, and you still paid Tyrod, knowing he wasn't going to be your guy, knowing you were going to draft a quarterback. See, I just don't like doing stuff like that. So, same thing with the Bears this year. Why sign Andy Dalton if you're going to draft a quarterback? Why sign a guy if you know he's not going to be the guy? So I'm not really a big fan of the stopgap thing anyway. I think you should just draft a quarterback in the first round. And if you can, maybe he's your guy. And if he stinks, draft another one. He stinks, draft another one. It ain't that bad, like I think people over it, like think just because you take like a Dwayne Haskins at 15, you can't take another one the next year if you don't think Dwayne's it. Or like Daniel Jones, you got to give him. No, man. If you think Daniel Jones sucks after a year, draft another quarterback. Whatever. Who cares? Because if they're both good, trade one. It's
get some value back.
Right. It's not that crazy. So I'm not a big fan of the stopgap guy, and I think reading the names of the stopgap guys should also make people wary of that option, because I just don't think that if you guys are mad about Russ and his salary, that's fine. A cheaper quarterback is not going to make you less pissed off on Sunday. I'll just put it that way. I don't like y'all was still mad at Gino. He's not making yes. I don't think that makes it any better if you just get like Teddy Bridgewater for a year so you can win 6 games and then maybe draft the next dude. It's just like just draft the next dude anyway. Draft the dude now. Make a trade and get a first round pick and draft a guy from Pittsburgh. And if he stinks, draft Bryce Young. And if he stinks, draft some kid who's in a junior in high school right now. Who cares? Just keep drafting a guy till you get your guy.
Speaking of money, is it fair to expect $35 million a year Russell Wilson to play better than the Bears' third-string quarterback?
Yeah, I think you got to say who the third-string quarterback is. Like I said, Nick Foles won a Super Bowl MVP, and that's not to say that validates his whole career. It's that he's not your run-of-the-mill third string.
Matter of fact, they said that on the broadcast today. Aqib Talib and Aaron Goldsmith.
Yeah, so and I can't wait to listen to Aqib on the call.
He was I enjoyed it.
Oh, I think he's going to be a star at that position. But yeah, of course he should play better than Foles. It doesn't matter what money he makes. He's better than Foles, so he should play better. Now, to be fair, I don't think he played that bad. Like, I don't think did Foles play better than Russ? Like, did he really? I don't think so.
He won the game, so Foles,
Russ wasn't bad.
He wasn't bad, but he did give up a big sack that kind of put the stamp on it. There was, while Foles is meanwhile throwing 2-point conversions. That stings.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I get your point. Yeah, but yes, of course, to answer this person's question, yeah, of course, Russ should outplay Foles, no matter what Russ makes. Though I don't think the salary is the point. You should just play better than Foles if you're better than Foles, and you have better stuff around you. The Bears are bad. Like, their offense is bad, their O-line's bad, and Foles was able to do a lot more with a lot little. And I think that's the issue. It's not their salary. Oh, damn, Foles did play a lot better than Russ. Sorry, let's clear that up real fast.
Check the stats, looked at some things.
Yeah, I had to look at some advanced numbers real fast. Yes, Foles did play better.
Has Russ checked out? His completion rate since returning is way down from the beginning of the season. It's below 60%. I can understand the injury wouldn't help, but the Niners game aside, it's not getting better.
Okay, so has Russ checked out? I do not think so. I just think he's so obsessed with winning, and I think that he works so hard at it that checked out, I think, would be like, it's an effort thing, or maybe it's hard to explain, but I feel like you kind of feel anyone who's been in like a relationship before that didn't work. You kind of know when the other person's not really feeling you no more. You know what I mean? Or even in a friendship, you can just tell when people aren't feeling you in general. Your boss, a coworker, you can just kind of feel when they're not in it. And I don't get that from Russ. I just don't. However, I have heard that there are people in the building who feel that way, that he has checked out. Now, do they know a little bit more than me because they're in the building and I'm not? Perhaps. I don't know. I can't validate their thoughts there. I can only share them, and I say that I do think it is notable that there are people closer to the situation than me who do think that. Like I said, I don't necessarily. I just don't get that vibe. But people who are much closer who could get that vibe, there are people who do think that. And that, I think, is perhaps more important than what me or Chris thinks in this scenario, that there are people inside the building who are like, man, I think 3 might not be in it all the way. Now, like I said, whether they're right, who knows? But the fact that I've never heard that before. I've never heard that ever. And maybe that's tied to his performance. I don't know. Maybe that's his performance coupled with how his offseason went and, how he was kind of half foot out the door, half not, in the offseason. Maybe that contributes to it. But yeah, I don't think he's checked out, but the fact that there are people in the building who apparently feel that way, that's something. That's another reason. That's another inflection point damn near. That's another reason to suggest that this thing with Russ, John, and Pete just can't last. Somebody of those 3 has to go. At least one, maybe 2.
Let's look at other players on the Seahawks roster. Looking at 2022, what's the likelihood the Seahawks bring back Quandre? And if so, what kind of money would you like to see him get? He obviously loves playing here. Maybe some high bonus to keep cap low over the coming rebuilding seasons.
I don't think Quandre's back just because I think they're not going to be able to afford him. Now, I think they're thinking like a lot of other people are, that you can't really pay 2 safeties that, crazy money like that. I think that's dumb. I don't think you should use Jamal's salary to not pay Quandre. That's just bad thought process there and unfair to Quandre. All he can do is ball. You pay guys who ball. Simple to me. I would probably tag him if I did want to keep him if I was the Seahawks. I don't think they'll do that either, though. And honestly, if I'm Quandre, and be very clear, he hasn't told me this or anything, or no one close to him has either. But why would he want to come back here with all this going on? Like, go get the bag somewhere else.
He leaves Detroit, comes to Seattle, plans to win a championship. That is not working out, and he wants to come back. Not to mention, if Russ is not here, what reason do I have to come back here for?
Or Russ, if Bobby's not here,
a lot of intangibles here.
Yeah, so and shoot, some of them joints is tangible. Like, is Bobby on the roster or not? So I think that we have to consider that. Does he want to be back here? Like I said, I'm just speculating here. I don't know for sure, but I think that's a fair question. People have asked me that about DK. Like, Mike, does DK even want to re-sign here after what's going on here? And it's like, I don't know. I have no idea. Not talked to anybody close to DK on that, but I think it's worth considering that the answer could be no. And I think it's worth considering on Quandre too. Like, what is appealing about Seattle versus some of these other teams that have 2022 cap space? I think the Chargers got cap space. I know they lost to the Texans today, so not the greatest day to point that out. But the Bengals got cap space, the Colts, some other teams that could just be more intriguing to someone who's like still balling but wants to be a contender as well. Even if he likes it here, it's like he could like it somewhere else and get the bag somewhere else.
While Bobby is still an elite all-time great, do you think next year he's most certainly gone, considering his large cap hit and the way Brooks has been playing the last few weeks?
So Bobby's cap hit in 2022, I believe, was like $20 million, which is a lot. And I don't think he has any guaranteed money in his contract past this year. So they save about, looks like 16 mil, maybe, by cutting him. Yeah, looks like they do. So, and then they could also trade him, but I don't think that would yield anything more than like a 4th-round pick just because of the salary and the age there. So I think he's probably gone. Again, this is not something that I've been told or talked to anyone about. It's just me guessing. I don't know if I would do that. It depends. It depends on who's here. Russ, Pete, John. There's so many variables there before you address Bobby. I think the other thing to consider is, here's where I think it's stupid. If you get rid of Bobby because of Jordan, I just don't think there's anything that we've seen the last 2 years to think that if Jordan was the team's best linebacker every Sunday, that defense is going to be great. Like, Jordan's fine, but I think that he'll obviously get better, of course. But I do think that the Rams game on Tuesday was just such a good illustration of why having him be your best linebacker opposed to your second best is just troubling. He had a really great game against the run, and near the line of scrimmage. He also gave up the only 2 touchdowns the Rams had, right, in coverage, right? Because you got to be able to cover in this league, and you got to be able to cover Cooper Kupps, and tight ends and stuff. So I think that while Jordan's a promising player, freeing up $16 million and not having Bobby Wagner on the roster is not going to make your team that much better, specifically if you give that extra $16 million to this regime, who we've talked about earlier, don't really deserve the benefit of the doubt when it comes to drafting. So I don't think he'll be back. I think if they get rid of him in the name of Jordan Brooks, and then you still need another linebacker too, like Cody Barton or something, I don't know, BBK, draft one. I just think that it creates more problems than it solves by getting rid of Bobby, even if I think that that's probably what the front office will do. Or they'll probably present like, hey, Bobby, we want to restructure your deal or something like that. And probably tells them, flips them the bird like Earl, and then hits the market or something like that. That would be my guess.
Let's go with some D. Eskridge. Why can't they seem to get the ball to their top draft pick besides jet sweeps? I find it hard to believe that Freddie Swain just runs better routes than Eskridge or something.
I mean, he could, but I don't even care. If Freddie was that much better, you should have just not drafted D. I just don't man, this is one of those ones that I like D. I think these guys can ball. I think he's got really good hands too. You look at that ball he almost caught against the Rams on Tuesday. Look how he high pointed that. That he's already probably the best one on the team at that. That's really tough. I know Tyler can do it, but Tyler's more of a toe tapper. I think D went up there and damn near snagged that joint like a bear grabbing a fish out the river. That was good. So I don't know. I have a good answer for that one, man. I'm just as confused as you. I got to watch the film on that.
That's what I was about to say. But based on the film, we see what he does. It's just the Seahawks don't. The game plan is run the ball, and then Tyler Lockett, and then, hey, if DK is available, we'll throw to him. And then there's, Freddie Swain breaking plays. He finds ways to make plays on a broken play, and then there's D. Eskridge. He is really far down the totem pole, which is weird because he is your highest pick in this last draft. So you would think coming in, we want to get DK the ball and then Freddie and Tyler Lockett. That's what we want to do. That is not the case.
Even if he was higher up the totem pole, the way they're getting him the ball, it just seems like that's all you guys got. You guys drafted him 56 overall to run all these fly sweeps. That's it. Like I know like Robert Woods and Debo do stuff like that, but they also do other stuff.
They do everything.
Yeah, even Rondell Moore does more than that. You know, Rondell Moore is like really effective gadget player. And yeah, I honestly I wish sorry whoever asked this. I'm with y'all on this. I just don't know. I gotta watch the film on, maybe talk to some people. But I'm with y'all. I refuse to believe that this is the best way and the only way to use D. If it is, honestly, you should just trade D. Let him go somewhere else, bro. This is where they can actually throw the ball to him, actually be further than 6 inches from the quarterback. Like I'm just not with that, man. It's such a waste of talent.
The last one. How much does your job change as a beat reporter when the team is legitimately bad, like this team?
It changes a lot. Actually. You know, it's a lot harder to write about who guys are. You write a lot more about how they're performing. And that's not bad. But, you know, the fun of the job a lot of the times is writing a like fun feature story or diving into personalities or a relationship on the team or just the fun stuff. You know, it's fun when everybody's winning. You got all these ideas and everybody wants to talk and everyone's willing to text and talk off the record and sit down and do one-on-ones. Nobody wants to do that shit when they losing. You know, like I was going to text some people after the game today. I was like, man, damn, they're probably all pissed. Not even going to hit me back, you know? And that's usually the case after losses. You'll hit them after the game and then they hit you in the morning like, oh, my bad. Or I'm sorry, I'm just getting back to you. I just saw your message, you know. I'm not mad at it. Just saying that's the reality of the game. And whereas if you're on the Texans right now, I bet you everybody was texting back today. Hell yeah. You know, they're probably going crazy. You know,
Beat the Chargers.
Right. Yeah. You know, or when the Lions got their last couple wins, you know. So I just think that's one way it changes. Like people's willingness to talk to you and what they're willing to talk to you about changes a lot. And just the fundamental difference between the writing how people are performing versus writing about who they are. The latter was a lot more fun. Like think of all of the learning about those Legion of Boom era players we were able to do. Or is that the word? Yeah, whatever. We learned a lot about those guys because they were winning. Like no one gives a damn about who Sherm is if he can't cover. Right. And the team doesn't win. Same thing with Russ and Marshawn and Michael Bennett and Cliff Averill and KJ and Bobby and Cam and Earl. Like you learn so much about these guys because everyone's doing all these deep dives into who they are and what makes them tick because they were winning. No one cares about that shit when they're losing. Right. So I had all these ideas and all these people that I'm going to introduce you to and these personalities, you know, a couple of DK things, Bobby things, Quandre things, a couple of DJ Reed things. And I had to scrap them all because they're losing and then guys get hurt and stuff. So, and you can see I tried a little bit of it, you know, write about Al a little bit, wrote about Trey Brown the week before he got hurt. You know, even last year, wrote about Chris Carson the week before he got hurt. Damn, maybe I should
stop doing it.
Yeah, that's my bad. But like I tried this year writing about Puna in the offseason and Daryl, tried a Ugo thing that fell through. So like I try, but once they start losing, all that stuff goes out the window, man. And it's just harder and harder and harder to write about people when you're writing about performance. And it just gets hard, especially when people are performing the same for better or worse each week. And then it gets repetitive. You got nothing to write. So that's a couple ways that my job gets increasingly harder. And then you have to differentiate between what I'm doing and what Greg Bell is doing at Tacoma and Bob at the Times and Curtis and at KJR and Tim Booth at the AP, and then there's all these national people, you know, Peter Kings and Lockenforas and Schefters and whatever, you know, Ian Rappaport, all these people, Mike Silver. So then you're competing with all those people, and so you got all that going on. So it's really hard when they're losing, because it's just so your access sucks. Now it's throw COVID on top of all that. So yeah, the job changes a lot. It gets a lot harder, I think, and it gets a lot suckier. That's not a word, but you guys know what I mean. So I don't know one really cares, but I'm glad to answer that question though, because people don't really understand. But yeah, it's a lot harder to get people to text you back and answer the phone calls and get on the phone and do interviews and do one-on-ones and sit downs, all the fun stuff that happens when you're winning. You're losing, everybody's like, "Hey, dog, I want to talk. We suck." You know, so
what do you want to talk about?
And I think one more point on this is that when guys are winning, specifically players, they're willing to talk about what's happening on the field because it's positive. Like if Sidney Jones playing at all-pro level, all of the other DBs will talk about how well Sidney is playing. If Sidney's trash, No one wants to talk about Sydney because that's a betrayal of your teammate. And I understand that they don't want to, but it's like that's the difference. I can get 5 people on the phone if Sydney's playing all pro level. And look at the Packers, right? Rasul Douglas. He's having the year of his life. Everyone wants to talk about Rasul Douglas over there. No one want to talk about him if he was getting burnt every week. Right? Like, even if he was the story, no one wants to talk about it, right? It's kind of the Trey Flowers conundrum we had for a few years there. So that's how that's like 7 ways, honestly, how it changes for the worse. It stinks. So I can't wait till they start winning again. That'd be freaking great. Once they start winning, my job gets a lot easier. Until then, we got a long-ass offseason of a lot of rumors and leaks and breadcrumbs and Colin Cowherd monologues that we're going to have to sit through for months until Pete's fired, Russ is traded, or John's fired, or some version of all 3 of those things. So buckle up. I got my beer already ready. Actually, this is the beer I'm drinking for people who want to see. It's a Rogue Coast Haste Imperial Hazy IPA, 8.6%. So I'll be buzzing once I finish this. But yeah,
Wow.
it's a good question. I appreciate that question because, no one really cares about how our job works, but it does change a lot when a team is losing.
And that's how you end with a banger. We want to thank you guys for all the Twitter questions, all the love. This show is really just Twitter questions for the most part. We got
Good ones,
4
though.
minutes.
Good ones,
Great ones. Things that tie into the game, things that have been tied into these last few seasons, this whole season. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to add, Mike, before we get out of here?
Hitting on the key players: John, Pete, Bobby, DK, Quandre, Russ. No, a lot of good. This is what people want to know, and like I said, this is our last one of 2021. So appreciate all the love this year. Happy New Year, Merry New Year, as to quote my favorite East Oakland philosopher, Marshawn Lynch. Appreciate you guys. Appreciate the questions. What we'll probably do is we'll definitely have post-game shows the next couple of weeks against the Bears and then the Lions and the Cardinals. We'll probably do some more mailbag stuff where we just want to hear from you guys. And we'll have some other stuff too, but it's in this time of turmoil, when everything's going bad, it's really hard to get people to be guests too. So that's why
we're going to be working.
Yeah, we'll be working, but it's going to be a lot of us, me, Chris, and y'all, the listeners, trying to figure this thing out together, and me doing some reporting and stuff like that. So stick with us. We'll be back in 2022. The turn of the year. Happy New Year. You guys be safe. If you're in Seattle and it's snowing right now, please be safe driving out there. All that good stuff. And don't get COVID because it's ugly out here. Get your boosters, get your shots, all that shit. There's a lot of PSAs I just threw at the end of the show.
It's all love.
Yeah, it's all important stuff. So yeah, appreciate you guys. Thank you again. We're out.
Go Hawks.